I never thought my own daughter would be the one to unravel me, thread by thread, until the world saw nothing but a mad woman. My name is Eleanor, and I've spent my life building a fortress of love around my family, only to watch it crumble under the weight of betrayal. It started with whispers, soft at first, like the rustle of leaves before a storm. My daughter, Claire, barely 22, with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, began telling people I was losing my mind. She said it with such conviction, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering, that even I began to doubt myself. It was a Tuesday when I first heard the rumors. I was at the grocery store, reaching for a loaf of bread, when Mrs. Hargrove from down the street gave me that pitying look, the kind reserved for widows and stray dogs. "Eleanor, dear, are you managing okay?" she asked, her voice dripping with concern. I frowned, confused, but nodded, assuming she meant the usual struggles of a single mother. I'd raised Claire alone since her father left when she was 6, his suitcase packed with promises he never kept. I worked 2 jobs, kept the house spotless, and made sure Claire had everything she needed: clothes, books, a chance at college. I wasn't perfect, but I was steady, or so I thought. The whispers grew louder. Neighbors stopped inviting me to book club. My coworkers at the library, where I cataloged books with a quiet pride, started tiptoeing around me, their smiles tight. Even my best friend, Marla, began checking in too often, her texts laced with questions about my state of mind. I didn't understand until Claire's friend, Sophie, let it slip over coffee one afternoon. "Claire's been telling everyone you're not yourself," Sophie said, her eyes darting away. "She said you've been forgetting things, talking to yourself, acting erratic." My heart sank, a cold stone in my chest. My own daughter, the girl I'd rocked to sleep through nightmares, was painting me as unhinged. I confronted Claire that night. She was sprawled on the couch, her phone glowing in her hands, her dark hair spilling over the cushions like ink. "Claire," I said, my voice trembling, "why are you telling people I'm losing my mind?" She looked up, her green eyes cold, almost amused. "Mom, you've been acting weird for months," she said, her tone flat. "Forgetting where you parked the car, misplacing your keys, muttering to yourself in the kitchen. I'm just worried about you." Her words were a blade, slicing through my certainty. Had I been forgetting things? I didn't think so, but doubt crept in, insidious and heavy. I tried to brush it off, to chalk it up to Claire's youth, her need for attention. She'd always been dramatic, thriving on chaos, but this felt different, calculated. I started noticing things. My car keys weren't where I left them. My phone would be in rooms I hadn't entered. Once, I found a grocery list in my handwriting, but for items I'd never buy: anchovies, red food coloring, things that made no sense. Claire would watch me search for these misplaced pieces of my life, her lips twitching with something like satisfaction. I began to feel like a stranger in my own home, my reality slipping through my fingers. One night, I woke to the sound of typing. It was 2 a.m., and the glow of my laptop spilled from Claire's room. I crept down the hall, my bare feet cold on the hardwood, and peered through the crack in her door. There she was, hunched over my computer, her fingers flying across the keys. My stomach twisted. That laptop held everything: me emails, my work files, my private thoughts in a journal I kept in a locked folder. I trusted Claire. Or at least I had. I didn't confront her then. I was too shaken, too unsure. Instead, I waited, watching her like she'd been watching me. The next day, I checked my laptop. The journal was untouched, or so it seemed, but my email was open, and there were messages I didn't remember sending. One to Marla, rambling about how I couldn't sleep, how I felt like the walls were closing in. Another to my boss, apologizing for mistakes I hadn't made. My password was still the same, but I changed it anyway, my hands shaking as I typed. Claire was trying to make me look unstable. But why? What had I done to deserve this? I thought of her father, his cruelty, his lies. But Claire had been too young to remember him clearly. Or so I thought. I started keeping a notebook, hidden under my mattress, where I wrote down everything: every misplaced item, every strange moment, every time Claire's eyes lingered on me too long. I needed proof, something to anchor me against the tide of doubt. But the more I wrote, the more I questioned myself. Was I paranoid? Was Claire right? Maybe I was losing my mind, and she was just trying to help. But then I found Ida's text on her phone, left open on the kitchen counter while she showered. It was to Sophie. She's getting worse. I'm scared she'll do something crazy soon. My blood ran cold. This wasn't concern. This was a plan. I decided to fight back. Quietly, I installed a tracking app on my laptop. One that recorded every keystroke, every login. I didn't tell Claire. I didn't tell anyone. I let her think she was winning, that I was crumbling under her lies. But I was watching, waiting, gathering the threads she thought she'd pulled loose. I didn't know what she wanted yet: money, control, revenge for some imagined slight, but I knew one thing: my daughter had underestimated me. She thought she could break me, but I was still her mother, and I'd built my life on protecting her. Now, I'd protect myself. The days stretched into weeks, each one heavier than the last. Claire's lies grew bolder. She told our pastor I'd been hearing voices. She told her professors I'd forgotten her birthday. She even called a family meeting with my sister, Ellen, claiming I needed help. Ellen, bless her, didn't buy it entirely, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. The same doubt I'd fought in myself. I wanted to scream, to shake Claire and demand why. But I held back. I needed evidence, something undeniable. And then, one night, came. Claire logged into my account again. The tracking app pinged my phone. A silent alarm in the dark. I waited until she left for a party, her laughter echoing as she slammed the front door. Then I opened my laptop, my heart pounding. The app had recorded everything: every keystroke, every file she'd opened. She'd been in my journal, my emails, even my bank account. But it was the search history that stopped me cold. She'd been looking up nursing homes, power of attorney forms, and most chillingly, how to declare someone mentally incompetent. My daughter wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. She was trying to take my life. The realization hit me like a fist to the chest. Claire wasn't just playing a cruel game. She was orchestrating a takeover. My life, me freedom, My savings. My very identity was at stake. I sat there in the dark, the laptop screen casting shadows across my hands, and felt a rage I hadn't known I could feel. It wasn't just anger at Claire. It was anger at myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting her so blindly. But beneath the rage was something else: grief. This was my daughter, the child I'd raised, the girl I'd loved more than life itself. How had we come to this? I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My mind churned, piecing together the fragments of Claire's plan. The nursing homes. The legal forms. It was clear she wanted control. But why? Money was the obvious answer. I wasn't rich, but I had savings, a modest inheritance from my parents, and the house, fully paid off after years of scraping by. Was that it? Was Claire so greedy she'd destroy me for it? Or was there something deeper? Some wound I didn't know I'd inflicted. I thought back to her childhood, searching for clues. Had I been too strict? Too distracted? Had I missed some cry for help? The next morning, I played my part. I let Claire see the version of me she wanted: frazzled, forgetful, fragile. I misplaced my glasses in front of her, fumbled with my coffee mug, let my voice shake when I asked her about her day. Her eyes gleamed with that same quiet satisfaction, and it took everything in me not to confront her then and there. Instead, I kept my notebook updated, my hidden record of her betrayal. I added screenshots from the tracking app, timestamps of her late-night logins, copies of the searches she thought I'd never see. I was building a case, not just for myself but for anyone who might doubt me. Claire's lies were spreading faster now. She'd started a group chat with her cousins, my sister's kids, claiming I was unstable and needed supervision. She even suggested I might be a danger to myself. I overheard her on the phone with Ellen, her voice soft and convincing, saying she was scared for Mom. Ellen called me afterward, her tone gentle but probing. "Eleanor, Claire's really worried about you," she said. "She says you've been forgetting things, acting strange. Is everything okay?" I wanted to scream the truth, but I held back. Ellen was family, but she wasn't ready to hear it, not without proof. I told her I was fine, just stressed, and promised to see a doctor to ease her mind. The doctor's visit was a turning point. Claire insisted on coming with me, her concern so polished it could have fooled anyone. She sat in the waiting room, scrolling through her phone, while I spoke to Dr. Patel, a kind man who'd known me for years. I told him everything, not about Claire's plan, but about my symptoms. I described the forgetfulness, the confusion, all the things Claire had been telling people. I needed him to document it, to believe it, so Claire would think her plan was working. Dr. Patel frowned, ordered some tests, and prescribed a low-dose anti-anxiety medication. "Just to help you relax," he said. I thanked him, pocketed the prescription, and never filled it. When we got home, Claire was triumphant, though she hid it well. "See, Mom, I told you it's okay to get help," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. I nodded, playing the part of the grateful, broken mother. But inside, I was burning. I started digging deeper, using the tracking app to follow her digital trail. She wasn't just tampering with my accounts. She was creating new ones in my name. A second email address. A new bank account with a small transfer from my savings, barely enough to notice, but enough to test the waters. She was methodical, patient, and it terrified me. I needed to know why. I started searching her room when she was out, careful to leave no trace. Under her bed, I found a locked box, small and metal, the kind you'd keep for important documents. I didn't dare try to open it, not yet, but I noted its existence. This weight in my mind. I also found an old journal of hers, tucked in a drawer, filled with entries from her teenage years. Most were mundane school. Boys. Dreams of leaving our small town. But one page stopped me cold. It was dated 5 years ago, when Claire was 17. Dad was right. She'd written, "Mom's too controlling. She'll never let me go." Her father, the man who'd walked out on us, who'd called me obsessive when I begged him to stay for Claire's sake. I hadn't heard from him in years, but Claire had. I found emails on her laptop, unencrypted, from an address I recognized as his. They were recent, starting about a year ago. He'd been feeding her lies, telling her I'd driven him away, that I was unstable even then. He'd planted the seeds, and Claire had let them grow. But why now? Why this elaborate scheme? I needed more, and I needed it fast. I set a trap. I created a fake email in my account, one Claire would find if she logged in again. It was addressed to my lawyer, vague but alarming, mentioning a change to my will and a family matter I needed to discuss. I left my laptop open one night, the screen glowing in the living room, and waited in my bedroom, my phone buzzing with alerts from the tracking app. Sure enough, Claire took the bait. She read the email, forwarded it to herself, and deleted the evidencer, so she thought. The app caught it all. The next day, she was different, nervous, jumpy, her usual confidence fraying at the edges. She asked me about my plans, about whether I'd been to see a lawyer recently. I played dumb, my heart racing as I lied to her face. "Oh, just some paperwork," I said, waving it off. "Nothing you need to worry about." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't push. I could see the gears turning, though. She was scared, and for the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed something bigger, something that would expose her to everyone she'd convinced of my madness. I needed her to make a mistake, one she couldn't talk her way out of. So I kept playing the game, letting her think she was winning, while I tightened the net around her. I didn't know how far she'd go, but I was ready to find out. And deep down, beneath the anger and the hurt, I still hoped I could save her, save us both. The days that followed were a tightrope walk, each step deliberate, each moment laced with the fear of falling. I couldn't let Claire see my strength. Not yet. She had to believe I was unraveling, that her plan was working. So I leaned into the role she'd cast me in, letting my hands tremble when I poured coffee, leaving dishes unwashed, muttering half-sentences when she was near. It was exhausting, this performance of fragility, but it was necessary. Every time her eyes flickered with that quiet triumph, I reminded myself why I was doing this. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was my adversary, and I had to outsmart her. The fake email about my will had shaken her. But not enough to stop her. She was clever. My Claire. Always had been. She'd aced her exams. Charmed her teachers. And now she was using that same cunning against me. I kept the tracking app running, monitoring her every move on my laptop. She was careful now, logging in only when she thought I was asleep or out of the house. But she wasn't careful enough. She didn't know about the app. Didn't know I was collecting every keystroke, every search, every email she sent in my name. One night, I found something new. She'd been researching psychiatric evaluations, specifically how to request one for a family member. The searches were detailed, clinical, as if she were studying for a test. How to prove someone is unfit to manage their affairs. Signs of dementia in middle age. Legal steps for guardianship. My stomach churned as I read, the words blurring on the screen. This wasn't just about money or control. Claire was building a case to have me committed, to strip me of my autonomy entirely. The thought of Itoff losing my voice, my freedom sent a chill through me. But it also lit a fire. I wasn't going down without a fight. I needed allies. But trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Marla was sympathetic but skeptical, her faith in me shaken by Claire's lies. Ellen was too far away, and I didn't want to drag her into this until I had proof. So I turned to someone unexpected. Sophie, Claire's friend, the one who'd let slip about the rumors. Sophie was sweet but naive, easily swayed by Claire's charisma. I invited her over for tea, playing the frazzled mother to perfection. Sophie, I said, my voice soft, I'm worried about Claire. She's been acting secretive. Do you know what's going on? Sophie hesitated, her fingers twisting around her mug. She's just stressed. Mrs. Harper, she said, but her eyes darted away. I pressed gently, mentioning Claire's late-night phone calls, her sudden interest in my finances. Sophie squirmed, then admitted Claire had been talking about taking care of you because you couldn't handle things anymore. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant a seed. I thanked her, my smile warm, and asked her to keep an eye on Claire for her sake, not mine. Sophie nodded, and I knew I'd gained a reluctant ally. The locked box under Claire's bed haunted me. I had to know what was inside, but breaking it open would tip her off. Instead, I started leaving bait small, tempting clues to draw her out. I left a fake bank statement on the kitchen counter, one I doctored to show a large withdrawal I hadn't made. I forgot my phone in the living room. Its screen opened to a text from Marla asking about my recent spending. Claire took the bait every time, her searches becoming frantic. She looked up bank fraud, identity theft, even how to freeze someone's accounts. She was getting sloppy, and I was ready to catch her when she fell. But the deeper I dug, the more I uncovered about her motives. I found more emails from her father, saved in a hidden folder on her laptop. They were venomous, filled with accusations about how I'd ruined his life, how I'd poisoned Claire against him. He'd been in touch with her for years, it seemed, feeding her resentment, twisting her memories. One email stood out. She doesn't deserve what she has. Claire, you're smarter than her. Take what's yours. My hands shook as I read it. Her father wasn't just a ghost from our past. He was the puppet master, pulling Claire's strings. I could have hated her then, but I didn't. Pitied her. She was still my daughter, caught in a web of lies spun by a man who'd abandoned us both. I wanted to save her, to pull her back from the edge. But first, I had to stop her. I set a bigger trap. I created a fake document in my journal. One Claire would find if she kept digging. It was a letter to Ellen, confessing that I'd been struggling, but had uncovered something disturbing about Claire's intentions. I wrote that I was considering cutting her out of my will, leaving everything to charity instead. It was a lie, but it was believable, and I knew it would push Claire to act. She did. The tracking app caught her reading the letter late one night, her keystrokes frantic as she copied it, forwarded it to her father, then deleted it from my account. But she didn't stop there. She started drafting a response, pretending to be me, begging Ellen to ignore my ramblings because I was confused. It was bold, desperate, and exactly what I needed. I saved the evidence, my heart heavy but resolute. Claire was unraveling, just as she'd tried to unravel me. I called Marla the next day, my voice calm but urgent. "I need you to come over," I said. "There's something you need to see." Marla arrived within the hour, her face etched with worry. I showed her the tracking app, the emails, the searches, everything. Her eyes widened, then softened with guilt. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have believed you." I waved it off, too tired for blame. Marla was on my side now, and that was enough. But Claire wasn't done. She came home that night, her face pale, her hands fidgeting. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaking. I braced myself, expecting another lie, another performance. Instead, she sat down, her eyes meeting mine for the first time in weeks. "I know you've been looking into things," she said. I saw the letter to Ellen. My heart skipped. She'd taken the bait. But she wasn't confessing, not yet. She was testing me, trying to see how much I knew. I kept my face neutral, my voice soft. "Claire, I just want the truth," I said. "Whatever's going on, we can fix it." Her lips trembled, and for a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, scared and lost. But then her eyes hardened, and she stood up. "You're the one who needs fixing, Mom," she said, and walked out. I sat there, alone, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I'd hoped for a crack in her armor, a chance to reach her, but she was too far gone. Or so I thought. The game wasn't over yet, and I had one last move to make. The air in the house felt heavier after Claire's confrontation, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Her words echoed in my mind, sharp and cold, but beneath them, I'd seen a flicker of fear. She knew I was onto her, and that made her dangerous. I couldn't afford to hesitate now. Every move had to be precise, every step calculated. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, building a fortress of truth to protect myself. But it wasn't enough to just defend. I needed to strike, to expose her before she could tighten her grip on my life. I started by reaching out to Ellen. I hadn't wanted to involve her, but Claire's escalation left me no choice. I sent her a carefully worded email, attaching screenshots from the tracking app Claire's searches, her fake emails, the letter she'd written pretending to be me. I didn't accuse her outright. I let the evidence speak. Ellen, I wrote, I'm worried about Claire. She's been acting strangely, and I found these on my laptop. Can we talk? Ellen called within the hour, her voice tight with shock. Eleanor, what the hell is going on? She asked. I told her everything, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. She promised to come over the next day, bringing her husband, Tom, for support. With Ellen on board, I felt a spark of hope, but I wasn't naive. Claire had spent months convincing everyone I was unhinged. A few screenshots might not be enough to undo the damage. I needed something public, something undeniable. I thought about the locked box under her bed. It was a risk, but I had to know what was inside. That night, while Claire was at a friend's house, I crept into her room, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it would wake the neighbors. The box was still there, cold and heavy in my hands. I didn't have the key, but I'd learned a thing or two from years of fixing things around the house. A paperclip and a small screwdriver did the trick, the lock clicking open with a soft snap. Inside was a treasure trove of betrayal. Bank statements in my name, forged with withdrawals I hadn't authorized. A letter from her father, handwritten, promising her a cut of whatever we get. A list of names, neighbors, co-workers, even Dr. Patel with notes on what she'd told them about me. And, most damning, a draft of a legal document, half finished, requesting guardianship over me due to mental incapacity. My hands shook as I photographed everything, careful to leave the box exactly as I'd found it. This was the proof I needed to end her game. But as I closed the box, I felt a pang of sorrow. These weren't just documents. They were pieces of my daughter's heart, twisted by her father's poison. I wanted to hate her, to let the anger consume me. But all I could see was the little girl who'd clung to me after nightmares, her small hands wrapped around mine. I pushed the thought away. There'd be time for grief later. Right now, I had to protect myself. The next morning, Ellen and Tom arrived, their faces grim. I showed them the photos, the emails, the tracking app data. Ellen's eyes filled with tears, but Tom was furious, his voice low and hard. She's been playing us all, he said. We need to confront her, Eleanor. Now, I hesitated. A confrontation might push Claire further away, make her double down. But I was running out of time. The guardianship document was dated for next week. She was moving faster than I'd expected. We planned it carefully. Ellen invited Claire to dinner at her house, a family meeting to check in. I played along, acting nervous, scattered, letting Claire think I was crumbling. She arrived at Ellen's with that same polished concern, her voice soft as she talked about my struggles. But Ellen didn't let her finish. She slid the photos across the table, the screenshots glowing on her phone. Claire, she said, her voice steady. Explain this. Claire's face went pale, her eyes darting between us. For the first time, she looked small, cornered. "You don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her voice cracked. Ellen didn't back down. "You've been lying about your mother, manipulating her accounts, forging documents. What? Claire's eyes flicked to me, and I saw the moment she realized she'd been caught. But instead of confessing, she stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "You're all against me," she hissed. "You don't understand." She stormed out, leaving a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush us. I wanted to go after her, but Ellen grabbed my arm. "Let her go," she said. "She needs to face this." I nodded, but my heart ached. I'd wanted to save her, to pull her back from the edge, but she was running toward it instead. That night, couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her face, that flash of fear, and I wondered if I'd pushed too hard. But then my phone buzzed with a new alert from the tracking app. Claire was back in my account, deleting files, covering her tracks. She wasn't giving up, she was fighting harder. I knew what I had to do. I called my lawyer the next morning, a woman named Rachel who'd helped me with my parents' estate years ago. I sent her everything, the photos, the screenshots, the forged documents. She was calm but firm. "Eleanor, this is serious," she said. "We can file for a restraining order, freeze your accounts, and report the fraud. But you need to decide how far you want to go." I didn't want to think about it, Claire in court, Claire in jail, but I couldn't let her destroy me. "Do what you have to," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Rachel moved quickly. By the next day, my accounts were locked. A temporary restraining order was in place, and the police were investigating the forged documents. I felt like I was betraying Claire, but I had no choice. She'd left me none. When she came home that night, her face was a mask of fury. "You did this," she spat. "You turned everyone against me." I wanted to reach for her, to hold her, but I stood my ground. "Claire, you did this," I said. "You can still stop. Tell me why. Let me help you." For a moment, she wavered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I thought she might break, might finally tell me the truth. But then she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the empty house. I stood there, alone, my heart breaking for the daughter I'd lost, not to madness, but to her own choices. The game wasn't over, but I was done playing. It was time for the truth to come out, no matter the cost. The house felt like a ghost town after Claire walked out. Her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. A silence that pressed against my skin, heavy with what-ifs. I wanted to chase her, to drag her back and demand answers. But I knew it wouldn't help. She was running, not just from me but from the truth she'd woven into a noose around her own neck. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photos of the locked box's contents, the forged bank statements, the guardianship draft. Each piece was a shard of glass, cutting deeper into the love I still held for her. I didn't know how to stop loving her. Even now. Ellen called the next morning, her voice thick with worry. "Claire's at a motel," she said. Tom tracked her phone. "She's not answering my calls." I nodded, though she couldn't see me, my throat too tight to speak. I pictured Claire alone in some dingy room, her defiance crumbling under the weight of her choices. I wanted to go to her, but Rachel, my lawyer, had been clear. No contact until the restraining order was lifted or Claire came clean. I felt like a traitor, hiding behind legal papers while my daughter spiraled. But I had to protect myself. She'd left me no choice. The police came by that afternoon. 2 officers with kind eyes but firm questions. I showed them everything: the tracking app data, the photos, the emails from her father. They listened, took notes, and promised to follow up. "This is fraud, Mrs. Harper," the older officer said. "Potentially identity theft. We'll need to speak with Claire." I nodded, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I didn't want her arrested. Not really. But I needed her to stop. I needed her to see what she'd done. Not just to me, but to herself. Days passed, each one a blur of waiting and dread. I kept the tracking app active. But Claire hadn't touched my account since that night. Maybe she knew I was watching. Or maybe she was too scared to try. Sophie called, her voice hesitant. "Claire's been texting me," she said. "She's saying you framed her. That you're the one who's been lying." My heart sank. But I wasn't surprised. Claire was fighting to the end, twisting the truth to fit her story. I thanked Sophie and asked her to save the texts, just in case. Then, a breakthrough. Rachel called with news. The bank had flagged the unauthorized account Claire had opened in my name. They'd traced small transfers, barely noticeable, to an account linked to her father. It wasn't much money, not yet, but it was enough to prove intent. "This strengthens our case," Rachel said. "But Eleanor, if we push forward, Claire could face charges." "Are you sure?" I wasn't. I wanted justice, but I also wanted my daughter back. I told Rachel to hold off, to give me time to think. She agreed, but I could hear the warning in her voice. Time was running out. That night, I went through Claire's old journal again, searching for anything that might explain her betrayal. I found an entry I'd missed before, written when she was 18, just before she left for college. "Dad says Mom never loved him, that she pushed him away. I don't know who to believe. I just want to be free." My eyes stung as I read it. Her father had spent years poisoning her against me, and I'd been too busy working, surviving, to notice. I thought I was protecting her, but maybe I'd failed her in ways I couldn't see. I decided to reach out, against Rachel's advice. I sent Claire a text, simple and direct. "I know about your dad. I know what he's been telling you. Please, let's talk. I love you." I didn't expect a reply, but I hoped. Hours passed. Then a day. Nothing. I felt the weight of her silence, heavier than any lie she'd told. But then, late the next night, my phone buzzed. It was Claire. "Meet me at the park tomorrow, 3 p.m. Alone." My heart leapt, then sank. Was this a trap? A last-ditch effort to manipulate me? I didn't know, but I had to go. The park was quiet when I arrived, the autumn leaves crunching under my feet. Claire was there, sitting on a bench, her hands stuffed in her pockets. She looked smaller than I remembered, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. I sat beside her, keeping my distance, my heart pounding. "Why, Claire?" I asked, my voice soft but steady. "Why are you doing this?" She didn't look at me, her gaze fixed on the ground. "You don't understand," she said, her voice barely audible. "Dad said you kept him from me, that you lied about him. He said I deserved more, that we both did." I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to scream. "Your father left us, Claire. He chose to walk away. I never kept him from you, I begged him to stay." Her head snapped up, her eyes searching mine. For the first time, I saw doubt, real doubt, flickering in her gaze. "He said you were controlling," she whispered. "That you'd do the same to me." I shook my head, tears spilling over. "I only ever wanted to protect you. Everything I did was for you." She didn't respond, but she didn't leave either. We sat in silence, the weight of our words hanging between us. I wanted to reach for her, to hold her like I had when she was small. But I didn't. "Not yet. Claire," I said finally. "You can still fix this. Tell the truth. Let me help you." Her lips trembled, and for a moment, I thought she might break. But then she stood, her shoulders stiff. "I need time," she said, and walked away. I watched her go, my heart torn between hope and fear. She hadn't confessed, but she hadn't denied it either. It was a crack in her armor, small but real. I went home and updated my notebook, writing down every word she'd said, every gesture. I didn't know if it was enough, but it was something. For the first time in months, I felt like I might reach her, not the Claire who'd betrayed me, but the daughter I'd lost. The fight wasn't over, but I wasn't alone anymore. I had the truth, and I had hope. Hawkins. I was ready to use both. The park meeting lingered in my mind like a half-remembered dream, Claire's words looping through my thoughts. She needed time, she'd said. But time was a luxury neither of us could afford. The legal gears were turning. Rachel had warned me the police were close to filing charges, and the bank was pushing for answers about the unauthorized account. I wanted to give Claire a chance to come clean, to choose truth over her father's lies. But I couldn't wait forever. Every day she stayed silent was another day I risked losing everything. I threw myself into routine, trying to anchor myself against the chaos. I went to work at the library, shelving books with a mechanical precision, my mind elsewhere. My coworkers still tiptoed around me, their pitying glances softer now but still there. I didn't blame them. Claire's lies had been convincing, and I'd played into them with my act of fragility. But Marla was spreading the word, quietly, showing the evidence to a few trusted friends. The tide was turning, but slowly. I needed Claire to break, to confess, to make this right before the law stepped in. Ellen and Tom were my anchors now, checking in daily, their anger at Claire tempered by worry for her. "She's still family," Ellen said one night over dinner, her voice heavy. "We can't just abandon her." I nodded, though my heart ached at the thought. I didn't want to abandon her, I wanted to save her. But saving her meant confronting the truth, and she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I kept the tracking app active, but Claire hadn't touched my accounts since our meeting. Her silence was deafening, a void where answers should have been. Then, call from Sophie. "Claire's been talking to her dad again," she said, her voice nervous. "She's scared. Mrs. Harper." She thinks you're going to have her arrested. I closed my eyes, the weight of it all pressing down. I don't want that, I said. I just want the truth. Sophie hesitated, then sent me screenshots of Claire's text panicked messages about being trapped, about how her dad was pushing her to finish what we started. My stomach twisted. Her father was still pulling the strings. Even now. I went back to the locked box, needing to see it again, to remind myself of the stakes. It was still there, untouched. Its contents burned into my memory. I photographed it again, just in case, and noticed something Newa's small notebook tucked in the corner. It was Claire's. Not a journal but a ledger of sorts, tracking the money she'd moved, the lies she'd told, even her doubts. I don't know if I can do this, she'd written in one entry. Mom doesn't deserve it. My heart broke all over again. She wasn't a monster, she was lost, manipulated, torn between her father's venom and the love we'd once shared. I called Rachel again, my voice trembling. What happens if Claire confesses? I asked. Rachel was quiet for a moment. If she comes clean, cooperates, could lessen the charges, she said. But she'd need to act fast, and she'd need to turn on her father. I swallowed hard. Claire turning on her dad would be a betrayal of her own, a mirror of what she'd done to me. But it was the only way to save herself. I thanked Rachel and hung up, my mind racing. I needed to push Claire, not with threats but with truth. I wrote her a letter, not an email but a handwritten note, poured from my heart onto the page. I told her I loved her, that I'd always loved her, even now. I told her I knew about her father, his lies, his manipulation. You're not him, I wrote. You're my daughter, and I believe you can choose differently. Come home. Tell the truth. I'll be here. I left it on her bed, knowing she'd find it when she returned. It was a risk. She could destroy it, ignore it, run further, but I had to try. The next day, I got a text from Claire. I'm coming home, it said. My heart leapt, a mix of hope and dread. I didn't know what she'd say, what she'd do, but I prepared myself. I called Ellen and Marla, asking them to be there, not for confrontation but for support. When Claire walked through the door, her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, clutching the letter I'd written. Mom, she said finally, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. It wasn't a full confession. Not yet. But it was a start. I took her hand, my own trembling, and led her to the couch. Ellen and Marla sat nearby, silent but present. Tell me everything, I said, my voice soft but firm. And she did. Poured out like a dam breaking her father's promises. His lies about my cruelty. His plan to take my savings. My house. My life. She'd believed him at first, desperate for his approval, for a connection to the father she'd barely known. But as she spoke, her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. I didn't know how to stop. I held her, my arms around her for the first time in months, feeling the weight of her regret. It wasn't absolution, her actions had cut too deep for that, but it was a beginning. I looked at Ellen, who nodded, her eyes wet. Marla squeezed my hand, her faith in me restored. Claire was still talking, her words tumbling over each other, naming her father's involvement, the accounts, the forged documents. I listened, my heart heavy but hopeful. She was choosing truth, choosing me, and that was more than I dared to hope for. But the fight wasn't over. Her father was still out there, his shadow looming over us both. I knew what came next. Claire would have to testify, to face him in court, to unravel the lies he'd fed her. It would be hard, maybe the hardest thing she'd ever done. But I'd be there. I'd always been there, even when she couldn't see it. For now, I held her close, whispering that we'd get through this. Together. The truth was out. And it was enough for now. Claire's confession was a crack in the wall she'd built between us. But it didn't erase the damage. The truth was out, raw and jagged. And now we had to face what came next. She sat on the couch, her hands twisting in her lap, her eyes red from crying. Ellen and Marla stayed close, their presence a quiet anchor. But this was between Claire and me. I wanted to forgive her, to wrap her in my arms and pretend the past months hadn't happened. But trust is a fragile thing, and she'd shattered ours. Still, I saw the girl I'd raised in her trembling voice, her halting words, and I clung to that. She told us everything: how her father had reached out 2 years ago, first with emails, then phone calls, then secret meetings. He'd painted himself as the victim, claiming I'd driven him away, stolen his chance to be her dad. Claire, barely out of her teens, had soaked up his words, desperate for a connection I couldn't give her. He'd fed her resentment, drop by drop, until she saw me as the enemy. The plan to discredit me, to take my savings and my home, had been his, but Claire had carried it out, step by calculated step. I thought I was helping him, she said, her voice barely audible. I thought it was justice. Justice. The word stung. A knife twisted in my chest. I'd spent my life giving her everything: love, stability, a future, and she'd turned it into a weapon against me. But as she spoke, I saw the cracks in her certainty, the guilt that had been eating at her. She doubted her father's plan, she said, especially after finding my letter. You never gave up on me, she whispered. Even when I was awful, you didn't. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I hadn't given up, but I'd come close, and that shame was mine to carry. Ellen spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. Claire, you need to make this right. Not just for your mom, but for you. Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. I know, she said. I'll talk to the police. I'll tell them everything. My heart lifted, but it was heavy with fear. Her father was manipulative, cunning, and he wouldn't go down easily. Claire was choosing a hard path, one that would pit her against him in court, in front of strangers who'd judge her. But she was choosing it, and that was enough to keep me fighting for her. We called Rachel that night, her voice calm but urgent over the phone. If Claire cooperates fully, names her father, and provides evidence, we can push for leniency, she said. But she needs to act now. Claire agreed, her face pale but resolute. The next morning, we went to the police station together. her hand clutching mine like she was 6 again. Scared of the dark. She told the officers everything. Her voice steady despite the tears. She handed over the locked box. The emails. The notebook, every piece of her betrayal. Now her redemption. The officers listened. Their faces unreadable. But they took her statement seriously, promising to investigate her father. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, phone calls, and waiting. Claire moved back home, sleeping in her old room, the letter I'd written still on her nightstand. We didn't talk much at first, there was too much to say, and neither of us knew where to start. But we tried. Over breakfast, she'd ask about my day, her voice tentative, like she was testing the waters. I'd answer, keeping my tone light, though my heart was a tangle of hope and hurt. Marla came by often, bringing casseroles and stories to fill the silence. Ellen and Tom checked in, their support unwavering, though I saw the pain in Ellen's eyes. Claire was her niece, her family, and this hurt us all. The police moved faster than I'd expected. They tracked down Claire's father, Robert, in a small apartment 2 towns over. He'd been living off odd jobs. His charm faded, but his tongue still sharp. When they brought him in for questioning, he denied everything, claiming Claire had acted alone. But her evidence was ironclad: the emails, the handwritten letter, the bank records. Rachel called with updates, her voice steady. He's trying to pin it on her, but it won't hold, she said. Claire's cooperation is making the difference. I thanked her, my hands shaking as I hung up. Claire was saving herself, and me, but the cost was steep. One night, Claire sat me down, her eyes clear for the first time in months. Mom, I need to tell you why I believed him, she said. She spoke of her childhood, the hole her father's absence had left, the questions I hadn't known she was carrying. I thought he'd tell me who I was, she said. But he just used me. Her voice broke, and I pulled her close, my own tears falling. I'd failed her in ways I hadn't seen, not by controlling her but by not seeing her pain. We both made mistakes, I said. But we're here now. The legal process dragged on, each step a reminder of what we'd lost. Claire's testimony was scheduled, a date looming like a storm cloud. She was scared. I could see it in the way she fidgeted, the way her eyes darted to mine for reassurance. I gave it, every time, though I was scared too. Robert's lies had torn us apart, but Claire's truth was stitching us back together, thread by fragile thread. I started seeing glimpses of the girl I'd raised, her laugh when Marla told a bad joke, her offer to help with dinner, the way she hugged me before bed. I didn't know what the future held: court dates, consequences, maybe even forgiveness. But as I watched Claire sleep one night, her face peaceful for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. She'd lost herself in her father's lies, but she'd found her way back, not just to me but to herself. We were broken, but we were family, and that was worth fighting for. The road ahead was long, but we'd walk it together, one step at a time. The weeks leading to Claire's testimony were a delicate dance of healing and preparation. We lived in a fragile peace, our conversations careful but growing warmer each day. Claire was trying, and so was I. She'd spend mornings helping me in the garden, her hands in the dirt, her laughter soft but real. I catch her watching me sometimes, her eyes searching for the mother she'd tried to erase. I'd smile. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. We were rebuilding, brick by brick, on a foundation cracked but not shattered. Rachel coached Claire for the courtroom, her voice firm but kind. "Tell the truth. Nothing more. Nothing less," she said. Claire nodded, her hands clasped tightly, her resolve hardening. I sat in on those meetings, listening as she practiced her story, her father's manipulation, the forged documents, the lies she'd spread. Each word was a step toward redemption, but it was also a reminder of the pain we'd both endured. I held her hand when she faltered, my touch a silent promise that I wasn't going anywhere. The day of the testimony dawned cold and gray, the sky heavy with the threat of rain. Claire dressed carefully, a simple blouse and slacks, her hair pulled back to show her face open. Honest, scared. I drove her to the courthouse, Ellen and Tom in the back seat, their presence a steady comfort. The courtroom was stark, all hard lines and muted colors, the air thick with tension. Robert was there, across the room, his eyes cold as they met Claire's. I saw her flinch, but she straightened, her chin lifting. She was my daughter, and she was stronger than he'd ever know. Her testimony was steady, her voice clear despite the tremor beneath it. She laid out everything, his emails, his promises, the plan to discredit me, to take what wasn't his. She didn't shy away from her own role, admitting her lies, her betrayal, her regret. "I thought I was helping my dad," she said, her eyes on me. "But I hurt my mom, the one person who's always been there." My throat tightened, tears burning, but I kept my gaze on her, willing her to feel my pride, my love. The prosecutor was gentle but thorough, drawing out every detail, while Robert's lawyer tried to twist her words, painting her as the mastermind. Claire didn't waver. She had the truth, and it was enough. The judge listened, her face unreadable, but the evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the locked box, the bank records all backed Claire's story. Robert's denials fell flat, his charm no match for the paper trail he'd left. When Claire stepped down, she came to me, her arms wrapping around me like she was a child again. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. I held her tight, whispering back, "I'm proud of you." And I was. She'd faced her mistakes, her father, herself. That was courage I hadn't known she had. The court recessed, and we waited for the verdict, days stretching into a tense limbo. Claire stayed close, helping with chores, talking late into the night about her fears, her hopes. She wanted to go back to college, to start over, to be someone she could be proud of. I listened, my heart swelling, though the ache of her betrayal lingered. Forgiveness wasn't a switch to flip. It was a road we'd walk together, step by step. Marla and Ellen were there too, their laughter and support a balm for us both. The verdict came on a quiet morning, Rachel's call breaking the silence. Robert was charged with fraud and conspiracy, his bail set high. Claire's cooperation had spared her charges, though she'd have community service and probation, a light sentence for a heavy crime. She accepted it without complaint, her face calm but tired. "It's fair," she said. I need to make it right. I nodded, my hand on hers, knowing she already was. We went home. The house no longer a battlefield but a home again. Claire helped me cook dinner, her hand steady as she chopped vegetables, her smile tentative but growing. Over the table, we talked not about the trial, but about the future. She spoke of classes she wanted to take, dreams she'd buried under her father's lies. I spoke of the library, of maybe writing a book, of finding joy in small things again. Ellen and Tom joined us, their voices warm, the room filled with a cautious hope. Months later, Claire was back in school, her probation officer pleased with her progress. She called me every Sunday, her voice brighter each time, her laughter a gift. I'd visit her campus, walking beside her under trees just starting to bloom, our steps in sync. The wounds were still there, scars we'd both carry, but they were healing. She'd lost herself in her father's lies, but she'd found her way back, not just to me but to the woman she wanted to be. I stood in my kitchen one evening, the house quiet, the laptop closed for good. The tracking app was gone, the locked box donated, the past a shadow we'd outrun. Claire's letter-me letter to her sat framed on her desk, a reminder of the truth we'd fought for. I wasn't the mad woman she'd painted, and she wasn't the villain she'd feared she'd become. We were mother and daughter, flawed but fighting, bound by love that had bent but never broken. The world had doubted us, but we'd found our way, and that was enough.